I learned Taekwondo, punched my boss, and slammed her into the ground, and she started respecting me. Part 1. When I was a 15-year-old girl, I worked at a major donut shop chain in Canada. Yeah, you know the one. There are more of these shops than McDonald's here, and everyone goes there. It's like a cult. I used to work at a corporate store that trained new franchisees and retrained old ones that were cutting corners. Yikes. In addition to our regular operations. I used to train franchisees on how to operate the back-end baking shift from 4 a.m. until noon. I loved my work. I loved meeting new people, I loved showing them the process, I loved my company, and I loved my 2 managers. It was great. Except when it came to my inspector. Let's call her Mary. Mary was a district inspector and she had it in for all of us there. Our staff would see her red car in the parking lot and scramble to tidy up. She loved coming in when we were slammed, with a line up out the door, tables needing to be cleared, donuts flying off the racks, and everyone just trying to keep up. Never mind taking your break. People used to freak when they saw her car pull up. She was slim with big curly orange hair and a mean streak. She was an in-house inspector that worked for corporate and seemed to really enjoy her job, marking faults and handing her reports to our managers for them to file. She enjoyed her work until she came into the kitchen when I was working, which was most days. She hated it when I worked. Because I had to train people all the time, I had to keep a clean kitchen, with everything stocked, because it needed to be ready for the next shift where I trained people. It was also in great shape because the cleaning and refilling and prepping and operating the kitchen to code was what I did with the franchisees while training them. It more or less took care of itself. It also didn't hurt that I was a perfectionist. Mary didn't seem to like that at all. She would find any excuse to dock me points. I think she was a little obsessed with it. She would go to great lengths to catch me screwing up. Even my managers, who regularly rotated through other stores, felt bad for me. They said they've never seen that happen to anyone else like that. Mary would get irritated when she couldn't find much to report because she never wanted to give a perfect pass. So she would look hard. She would pull out heavy, old, out-of-circulation mixers from the bottom shelves and run her hands along the back to check for dust. Ha! Mary, I wipe that crap on the regular. It must have made her blood boil. And it would always come down to docking me points for my shoes. My shoes were dark navy, not black, and therefore weren't uniform compliant. I couldn't afford to buy work shoes, making minimum wage and all. Every time she visited, she would condescendingly point them out and tell me how I should know better, implying that I was lucky she didn't pursue it. She'd dock me points and drop off the paperwork to my managers with a smug smile. Bonus, if she could find a cobweb, that would be in the report too. I hated her. She almost brought me to tears when she'd do this. She knew how proud I was and how seriously I took my job. She just couldn't let me have that. I was also so confused by it because I had no negative history with her. I really took it personally. At the time, I was also the kind of person that would beat myself up over things and was really critical of myself, so this put a lot of fuel on the fire. Maybe she felt I'd make her look bad if she gave a perfect score. I'll never know. Part 2. I'd been taking Taekwondo at the time. I had an athletic background when I initially started, so I advanced quickly, and was competing quite early for my belt level. During class, we'd do our warm-ups, patterns, and finish by partnering up and practicing holds, throws, self-defense, sparring, among other things. Occasionally, when new students wanted to try a class, this is where they'd join in so that they could interact with other students. We didn't rubberneck to see who came in. Our instructor would just announce it and choose someone to pair with them. A lot of students didn't like partnering with newbies because it was boring. Although I would have rather trained with someone more advanced than me, I didn't mind being patient with a new student. My instructor welcomed someone called Mary to the class and directed me to pair up with her. I turned around and holy crap, there she was. I think we both had the same thought. Oh my god, is this really happening now? This is totally happening right now. It was surreal, like I was dreaming. I just kept staring at her and thinking blankly, what the frick? During class, I got to show her how to defend against an attack from the rear, where you drop down to lower your center of gravity, rear elbow strike the assailant in the gut, grab their arm and use your leverage to flip them over your shoulder and onto their back on the hard ground in front of you. Then kneel on them to pin them while striking them in the solar plexus. I demonstrated that to her over and over. I might also add that I killed her with kindness while doing so, not just because it was so enjoyable to witness, but because I'm not the type to be mean in that situation anyway. I encouraged her to demonstrate on me too, and I'd correct her and have her try again, which, let's be honest, was completely ineffective because she didn't know what she was doing. I'd say things like, "Almost got it, Mary, you just need to lower yourself like this so you can flip the attacker like this, wham, on her back again." That was a good 30 minutes, but I guarantee it felt longer for her. The day after, I ran into work screaming, "You will never believe what happened last night." My managers were giddy like children, and it was high fives all around. Mary came back for a few more classes, which was shocking. My instructor paired us every time. I think he saw how enthusiastic and patient I was with her and wanted to foster that relationship. Every morning after Taekwondo, my managers would want the updates immediately. "How was it? Tell me all about it. What did you get to do to her this time? Do an impression of her. Show me what her face was like." I don't think she thought she could physically hurt me because that was highly unlikely. But she did have a huge ego and maybe wanted to show me she wasn't afraid of me or that it didn't bother her because she was tough. Her ego was causing her physical pain and humiliation every week. Something had to give. And for the record, I wasn't really trying to go hard on her either. I was as neutral as I could be while properly executing the throws and submissions. I think that was obvious to her and to my instructor, who happily chose me to work with her time after time. He had no idea. Just like at my job, I did what I do best: patiently train new people while exemplifying proper form. Mary dropped out after about 4 weeks, maybe less. It was a grand effort, Mary. After that, I rarely even saw her at my work anymore. I think she used to time her visits around my shift or on my break. Sometimes I thought I saw her car driving out of the parking lot, and my managers would tell me that yes, that was her, and my report would just be left on the table in the back. She never docked points on me again. That crap was perfect. Haha! I do have to say that although Mary sounds like she was a really annoying jerk, you have to respect that she kept coming into the classes for a while and didn't want to give up. But then again, 4 weeks of just being repeatedly flipped over and taken into submission, even if it's done harmlessly, isn't great for anyone's self-esteem. But I don't know what her deal was in that store. She honestly just sounds like the biggest, nastiest jerk who was just out to get the author specifically. I think being an inspector who specifically comes in at rush hour every time is kind of telling. I mean, sure, come once or twice to make sure the store operates well and doesn't cut corners under tough conditions, by all means. But surely both you and the regular staff can do without that extra stress in your lives. And it sounds like the author ran a tighter ship than just about any restaurant or even fast food place that I've ever seen. If you pulled the old equipment out of the backs of the drawers in some places I've worked at, you might get a lot worse than dust, is all I'm saying. So the author was really onto it, and I don't know why Mary would just go so out of her way to bully a 15-year-old girl who honestly just seems like a better employee than any adult in hospitality. Get a life, Mary. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Yelled at by a customer at work. This happened to me in March of 2020, just as the lockdown started and many stores had started having special shopping hours for elderly and high-risk customers. I worked at a grocery store on the overnight stock crew, and my shift ended at the same time the special hours started. I'd frequently pick up items I needed at the end of my shift before heading home. On this particular morning, we'd finally gotten a shipment of toilet paper and cleaning wipes in. I picked up a 12-pack of the cheapest toilet paper in the store and a canister of Clorox wipes for my mum, who is high risk. I wasn't wearing my black work polo because I was 7 months pregnant, and it didn't fit, so I was allowed to wear a plain black t-shirt instead. I picked up a few food items and headed for the register. I ended up in line behind an older woman. She said very pointedly to the cashier, who's a friend of mine, that we needed to be more strict on the elderly and high-risk guidelines. She looked straight at me as she said it. She said we needed to have a guard at the doors to make sure no one was coming in during the special hours, except those that actually needed to shop at those times. At our store, it was from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. every day. This lady also said that if the stores let other people in to shop, they should make sure they don't buy the essentials that other people need, looking at the toilet paper and Clorox wipes in my hands. Now, my coworker is an elderly woman, and she's not shy. She's a spitfire, and she'll tell you what she thinks and doesn't give two craps about what you think. She looks straight at the woman and says, "There's a limit on essential items. You can't buy 2 packs of toilet paper." The customer had 2 of the biggest packs of toilet paper that we sold. We're talking 18 rolls each. The woman snapped at her with a, "Fine, whatever, but I'm not coming in here if you're going to keep letting other people in during the special hours. I want to speak to a manager." Bet you didn't see that coming, folks. My coworker calls the manager on duty, who happens to be my manager on the overnight crew. He approaches and this woman goes off, yelling about how we're letting regular people shop during the special hours, how the cashier was rude and was limiting her, among other things. She just went full Karen. My manager looks at me and can see that I'm irritated. He looks at the customer and straight up says, "I would like for you to leave." She got angry and asked why she should be the one to leave when she was clearly following the rules of the shopping hours, and I was not. He said, and I'll never forget this for the rest of my life, "This customer you're harassing is my best employee. She just finished working a 9-hour shift to fill these shelves so that you could come in to buy your essentials. She's picking up a few items after her shift, and on top of that, you're harassing a pregnant woman who's considered high risk and has as much of a right to shop during these hours as you do. She's exhausted and she's scared because of the pandemic, but she comes in every night, works extra hours, and busts her butt so people like you can come in and talk down to her. You can leave now and you're welcome to stay out." And he walked away. She tried to stammer an apology at me and ask about my baby, when I was due, what I was having, among other things, when the loss prevention guy showed up to escort her out. I ignored her and picked up 1 of her packs of toilet paper instead of the 12-pack that I'd grabbed. I checked out my items and was on my way while loss prevention took her picture and made notes that she was banned from the store for 30 days for harassing an employee. Sorry for the long story. And yes, that manager was the best manager I've ever had. He's the only reason I stayed with the company for as long as I did. And thank you to everyone asking about the health of myself, my baby, and my mum. About 2 weeks after this story happened, I had to have an emergency C-section and give birth to a 4-pound, 8-ounce baby boy. We spent 3 weeks in the hospital, but he's doing fantastic. My mum has been working from home and being cautious, so she's stayed healthy. She has Crohn's disease, and the meds she takes for it are immunosuppressive. She looks completely healthy and gets lots of nasty looks too. It sucks that people judge each other so often. Unfortunately, I came back from maternity leave to find that my favorite manager had retired while I was gone, and I changed jobs about a month later. I'm still an essential worker, but now I'm not out in public where I have a higher chance of catching the Rona. Thanks again for listening. In short, a woman was banned from a grocery store for 30 days after being an absolute witch to me at work. So yeah, I'll say that the lady in this story is definitely a bit of an annoying old bat, the kind that you'd roll your eyes at when they entered the store if they were a regular. I will give her some credit for apologizing and trying to de-escalate once she realized the situation, though. The beginning of the pandemic was a rough and high-stress time, and maybe this was a release of something, but yeah, I don't know why she couldn't just trust that there was a reason why this lady was in the queue behind her. Because apparently she was blind enough to not see that she was preggo, or ignorant enough about the rules to not know that she could only grab 1 stack of paper, or that people who were pregnant were also high risk. I'm going to file this under bored person who wanted an excuse to complain and then got exactly what she asked for. Just do what the rest of us do when we think we see someone breaking the rules. Mutter under your breath, go home, and complain about it. I will say that I think that maybe the staff were a little harsh on her considering she apologized. I do hope that there was somewhere else she could go to get her stuff. If this was a small town or something, condemning a senior citizen to starve seems like a bit of an overreaction. But hey, as we said, tensions were high. Keep complaining? Well, enjoy your vacay in a construction site. This happened a long time ago when I worked on cruise ships. We always had jerks from the internet forum Cruise Critic. This guy had printed a sign saying, "I'm a cruise critic," and put it on his cabin door. Basically, these people expect special service and complain about absolutely everything to get free upgrades, drinks, or even a free cruise. As soon as he got on board, he complained about his cabin and was upgraded to the balcony suite to shut him up. It still wasn't good enough. He kept complaining that his TV reception wasn't crystal clear. We visited his cabin and saw no issue with the image. In fact, it was better than most TVs, as it was closer to the amplifier for that section. After replacing said TV anyway and explaining that we're tracking a geostationary TV satellite on a moving ship with a gyro-stabilized dish and millions of dollars of above and below decks equipment, he still kept complaining that the picture wasn't as clear as his TV at home. After 48 hours of him complaining and demanding a complimentary cruise — he was already cruising for free after complaining so much about his last cruise — we just decided to plan our revenge. When we knew he was at his allocated dining time, my AV team showed up in the cabin and gathered a team of engineers, fitters, and electricians. We stripped all of the wall and roof panels and pulled out all of the AV wiring, dumping a buttload of dust everywhere before downing tools and calling it a day. After the guest and his wife returned after dinner and a show, he called the front desk, furious that his cabin had been turned into an uninhabitable construction site. It was explained to him that we had listened to his demands and as such were rewiring his cabin to ensure he has crystal clear TV reception, just like he asked. He was advised it would take a few days, the rest of the cruise, as it was a complex job. He went quiet before asking to be moved to another cabin. He was moved to a cabin smaller than his original cabin and above the bow thrusters. He was not heard from again for the rest of the cruise. Were we too harsh? I think you were harsh, but it did shut him up and he was a massive tool. So it's a jerk vigilante cape for you and your co-workers as far as I'm concerned. Go hard. If any of our listeners were wondering whether there's a male alternative to the Karens who seem to go through life attempting to complain, not pay, and grift as much free stuff as possible, I would like to offer up this jerk. What an absolute moron. Oh, and printing off a sign that he was from a review site in order to maybe get preferential treatment? Get effed, Cruise Ken. And I love that he got downgraded far below his original room. We all know that he was only complaining about non-existent TV issues to get more free stuff. He was on a free cruise to begin with and was just looking to continue the streak. Do the rest of us complain when an in-flight or on-boat entertainment isn't as good as our stuff at home? No, we know that would be ridiculous. Next. My father's revenge against the neighborhood punks. This story is a little old, taking place around 2000 or so. Anyways, during that summer, there was a rash of punks who would go and vandalize houses, cars, and pretty much anything else they could do to raise hell. It was so bad that they'd keep stealing the hubcaps off my father's Grand National, as well as try and get in to steal the radios and change. He was forced to keep it unlocked as it was cheaper than them breaking the windows. The police would always take their sweet time getting here too. It would take 20 minutes or so to send one officer here, even though I could walk to the station in that amount of time. By then, those kids would have run off and gotten away. My father is an engineer by trade and decided to get back at them, as right after he replaced the hubcaps, they'd be there that night to take them. My father went to the hardware store and brought some wires, razor blades, and grabbed a few car batteries he had in the garage. What he did was truly diabolical. He took a little glue on the inside of the door handles, then secured razor blades to cut anyone who attempted to open the door. Next, he stripped some of the wires he got and wrapped them around the hubcaps, making sure they were pressed tight against them. He took another wire and used a little tape and glue to have the wire hovering over the other wires so that if someone were to grab them, it would complete the circuit and either burn or shock them. Eventually, he was able to get them all rigged before running the wire ends back to the batteries. He connected them and then went inside. That night, my father left the windows open slightly so he could listen for them. Sure enough, sometime after midnight, those little crap bags came back. But after a few yells, they seemed to leave rather quickly. The morning revealed a fair amount of blood around the handle, which then trailed down the driveway. One of the hubcaps had melted slightly from the heat of the wire, but the others were not triggered. Needless to say, they didn't seem to come back after that one. I just wish we had a security system that also had cameras so I could watch those morons get it. Wow. I mean, I'm mildly concerned that your dad may have put someone in hospital, but then again, they were messing around and doing illegal stuff, and you've kind of got to understand that the worst can happen to you when you do that. You're going to repeatedly vandalize one guy's car, that guy is probably going to do something to stop that. In certain parts of the US, I figured that it might be a great way to catch a bullet. I hope that at least nobody copped any injuries that a night in hospital couldn't fix, and that maybe this put a stop to the kids' shenanigans in the area in general, although that feels a bit optimistic. Who knows? When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.